Okay, so this is just fair warning. This one's going on my YouTube channel for the repair. I think the viewers will find it interesting.
Oh, okay.
So you need to say, your name. Well, I don't want you to say your real name, so let's just call you Ramon. Okay, so you're Ramon. So Ramon, tell us about this rig, because it's going to be for sale, right?
I'm thinking about it.
Okay, you're thinking about it. Well, I won't put it in there as firm, but he's thinking about it. Ramon's thinking about dumping this. This is a Polaris, as you can see, but it's got a KTM engine. It's a 525 KTM single cylinder, and it is an absolute monster. This little tiny thing will go so fast. I think the top speed rated is like 73 miles an hour on this thing.
I have had it on a GPS at over 70. It was 72, 73.
Yeah.
But I've never found the rev limiter on this thing. Never.
I know, this thing is killer.
And I assume it has one, but I've never found it. It is never signed off. I just don't have enough room ever to let it get there.
I know.
And,
so Ramon might be selling it, but we'll figure that out later. And if it is going to be up for sale, we'll update the video and the description at that time. And I can always be an intermediary and put somebody in touch with you.
Can I tell you just a little bit about this particular machine?
Go ahead.
It's not a hardcore motocross machine. I have motocrossed it. But this is sort of a cross between a motocross and an enduro. They made the exact same model with the solid rear axle, which is the pure motocross model. This has the independent rear.
Yeah, it's got CV axles, right. Well, it's a quad sport, really.
Yeah.
That's the style.
And you can ride it as fast as you want to go, or you can plunk along with your kids or grandkids, and it'll do it both ways.
I know, this thing is, I tell you what, I'll explain to everybody my history with it as we get along, but I just wanted to introduce you to Ramon. And and I figured he'd tell you a little bit about it too. Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. We got us a special project here, which I think you'll find interesting. This is a repair project on a 2008 KTM-powered Polaris 525 RS. Now this has a 510cc single-cylinder KTM motor. It is one badass torque monster. I know this because I have a history with this machine, and I had to go back to the 2017 folder on my computer to look up the service ticket on it, where I did a service on it because it wasn't running properly. I'll go into that a little more depth as we get into it, but let me tell you what it's here for now. The main thing is the customer, as you saw from the previous clip, we'll call him Ramon. And if anybody out there, by the way, recognizes this gentleman, please don't put his name into the comments at all, because you never know. Anyway, this customer is thinking about selling this. I can't honestly say that he's going to, so don't be pounding my door down, not literally, but even figuratively yet. I will advise you hopefully by the end of the video, or 2 videos if that's the case. And anyway, he wants it in running condition, and right now it'll only run on choke, or the enricher on, okay? So there's a carburetor problem. It's been sitting for a while with the same gas in it. Same old story. And the other problem we have here is this is a regular, clutch shifter like on a motorcycle, because really that's a bike engine that's in here, a motorcycle engine. And it is, like I said, it is one badass, and we don't have any clutch. This takes that weird Magura. It's called Magura blood or something like that, mineral oil. So we got to get some of that. We have to get a rebuild kit for either the or the master and the slave for the clutch slave cylinder down in there, right in there somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, we're basically going to get it running, take care of any other issues that we come across. He said some of the hoses, like vent hoses and stuff, crumbled over time. We'll fix that. We'll make sure everything's good on it, and of course we'll take it for a test ride. So like I said, I'll get into it as we start tearing it apart and get into the carb, and I'll explain my history with it at that point. So let's go ahead and get it up in the air, and we'll start pulling some body work off. Okay, so next day, got her up in the air, going to do some work now. Stop talking about it. Stop jerking around. Seat releases here, which is really hard to operate. I'll have to lubricate that. So let's go ahead and get the seat off. I'm going to go ahead and put you in the stand, and we'll move it around here periodically. And we'll talk about what I was talking about yesterday, my history with this, experience with it, and as we go along, what we're going to do on this job. And I'm not 100% sure all the stuff we're going to do, because I'm sure I'm going to find other things that need to be addressed. Perhaps brake fluid. I'm not sure if this takes the mineral oil brake fluid. I do know it. I think I mentioned in the earlier clip yesterday, it takes the Maguro blood, that red special hydraulic oil, which is mineral oil based for the clutch. So I got some of that on order, because the stuff the customer brought over is probably enough to, wet your whistle. That's about it. So we'll get you in the stand, and then we'll take it from here. But this is a really beast of a machine. In fact, I'm going to call it the Beast is back. Because I tell you what, folks, this thing is a monster when it comes to running and speed. It's just amazing. It's just really hard to describe. So let's go over it real quick now we have this out. I'm pretty sure, so I'm trying to remember it from 5 years ago. Yeah, all this got to come out. I'm pretty sure the air box. And we got to get underneath here for this carb. This is a FCR Keihin, so a flat side CR carb, which is the MX version. There's a couple of differences that I'm learning about these MX versus non-MX carbs. I just did a DRZ 400E, which I didn't video anything on because I already did a DRZ 400S. But that has a, the S model's got the garden variety Makini constant velocity CV carb. But the E model, like this one, has a Keihin flat slide. Now, these are performance carbs, and the E model is an off-road, technically, air quotes. You can get them, tagged depending on the state, of course. But it's an off-road version, as performance carb. This is a performance machine, Outlaw, and so it has the MX version. I'm not expert enough to tell you what the difference is on internals as far as the MX versus non-MX, but I can tell you there's a difference in the style of the different gaskets. Like the top slide cover gasket is different on the MX version. It's an O-ring type as opposed to a composite, composite type, which is a shaped cutout gasket made out of paper, composite, whatever that is. And that's what the DRZ 400E's Keihin had, and this one has got the O-ring type. So I was actually able to find this in the parts fish finally. I had it listed in my old service ticket as an 06. I don't know why, probably because I'm dumb. This is an 08. So once I was able to find it in parts fish, naturally I took a look at the carb, which is under the engine section of the parts fish. Go figure. And it's definitely the MX version of the carb, because I went on the JD Jetting website. They sell jetting and carb kits, rebuild kits. I really like his stuff a lot. Comes out of Washington State somewhere. I found the FCR MX kit for this bike was exactly the same as the parts that were laid out in the parts fish. So that's on order, but we still need to get all this stuff apart. And I don't exactly remember what I need to do that. I think, like I said, I need to pop out the air box and then pull the carb off the back. I don't think any of the body work needs to go. The tank is dry, apparently. We'll verify that. And because he said he drained the gas out of the tank a while back, so that's good. But it's a plastic tank anyway, so it's not going to rust. And then we'll get the carb out and we'll take a look at it. So anyway, I promised to tell you about my history on this thing, and I will do that now. 5 years ago, a customer reached out to me. That's when I started doing work for this particular customer about working on this unit. And the problem was at that time, and I'm trying to remember exactly the detail on it. The problem was that he was out of state with it, and it wasn't running right, somewhere up in the South Carolina, North Georgia area, something like that. And so he brought it to a KTM dealer or a Polaris dealer, whatever. Remember, it's a KTM engine. So anyway, he drops it off. I don't know how long it was there for, but what ended up happening was they said that they couldn't find a problem with the carburetor and they didn't know what was wrong with it. Rode it around a little bit longer, whatever he was doing up there with it, and it wasn't running correctly. And I just honestly don't remember the issues with it. I think it would start up and then it would die and just wouldn't run right. So he ended up just trailering it home, Jura filter, and I got it. So, I'm not familiar with these KTMs at all. In fact, I don't really want to work on them, as far as the bikes go. But something like this I would, because it's kind of a hybrid, kind of interesting. Especially with the fact that it's got a Keihin carburetor, it's not some exotic thing. And so at that point, I started looking at it, and I couldn't get it to run either. I started it, and it would just die. It wouldn't run right. It wouldn't ramp up as far as RPM goes. It was behaving exactly as if the cam timing was off. It was popping, and it was missing. And the way it would crank like it was a compression issue. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. And these KTM motors are pretty particular about how you do cam timing. In fact, I think I did take all this off, took the tank out, and I ended up pulling the head cover off. And there's a special procedure you do where you actually have to lock the crank shaft. I don't remember which side it's on. I think it's on the other side. There's a hole that goes through the crankcase that's got a plug. And you take the plug out and you bar the motor over, and I don't remember how I did that either, till you get that a little notch lined up to that plug. Then you put a special tool in, which is essentially an M8 bolt with a taper on the end of it. I probably still have it in my special tools drawer. You put it in there and you lock that up, and that locks it on top dead center, so there isn't any marks, in other words. And then you check your cam timing, and I did that, which took some time to do and figure out. But, I was going off of the service manual, which said do it this way to check your cam timing, so that's what I did, and it was spot on. So I put it all back together, and I'm trying to figure it out. Now, I had not pulled the carburetor because I made an assumption, which is something that I've talked about in other videos. I made an assumption because another place had looked at it and said that there was no problem with the carb. So I said, well, it can't be carb problem because there's no problem with the carb, right? So at that point, after I did all that work and, did the cam timing rather, oh man, those are tight, and did everything else that I could check because I thought it was something to do with timing, I said, screw it, I'm going to pull the carb. So this is what I did. What I'm doing right now is what I did then. Oh, hang on, I got to get something different. See, back when I worked on this 5 years ago, I was a stud. That's why these are so tight. Because now they'd be probably loose. Because I'm a wiener. So anyway, where was I? Pulled the carb, and I got the service data, which I still have. I do have that. And I took a look at it, and the first thing I noticed was that the float level was way off. And if I remember correctly, I kind of glanced at it last night. The float level is not a particular measurement. It just says when the float is just touching the float needle, to make sure that the float is level with the bottom of the carb, which would be upside down, of course, or sideways, the actual top half of the carb. And that's the proper float level. Something like that, or the bottom of the float. I can't remember which, but you don't measure it, you line it up to something on the carb, and it was way off. So I corrected that. The other thing I found was that the accelerator pump, this is an accelerator pump carb, it'd be on the other side, part of the float bowl, which we'll look at a little bit. The diaphragm inside of it was upside down. It was flipped around, so it was not installed correctly. That was another problem, especially when you hit the throttle. It wouldn't do anything. And then the third problem I found was that the throttle positioning sensor was way out of spec as well. I don't know if they disassembled the carb completely and just threw it back together. That's what it sounded like or looked like to me at that time. I corrected those three things and put it back in, put fuel to it, and boom, it took off and it ran like a freaking raped ape. I may have done some finite adjustment on the slow screw, but I don't remember, probably, and got this thing running perfect. So that's my history with it, and that was 5 years ago. So we're essentially going to be duplicating this again in this service, but I wanted to bring you along because this is a kind of an interesting machine. As far as the layout goes, because it's a hybrid, it's got the DNA from both Polaris and KTM, and I can't tell you what the relationship was between the two marks back then, why they did some sort of a partnership, but I can tell you right now that this machine is badass fast, and it just runs like a scalded dog when it runs. So this should be a fairly simple service as far as getting this thing back up and running. Again, carburetor work mainly, and we'll take a look at the other stuff as well. So let me go ahead and finish breaking this carburetor out. If I see anything interesting while I'm doing it, I'll show you that. But otherwise, I think we'll pick it back up once the carb is out. So now you know the story or the backstory on this. I think it helps understand. So I'm somewhat familiar with it, especially the carb part. So we're definitely going to concentrate on that. Okay, I'm going to show you something about these FCRs that I recently learned. You probably already knew it if you're familiar with these. There's the accelerator pump down there, and you can tell from what I understand, MX versus non-MX from whether or not the accelerator pump, push rod is exposed. This one is completely enclosed, and the one like on the DRZ 400E, the non-MX, you'll have it come down with a little rubber boot. And you'll see that boot about where that feature is, and then you'll see the the opening to the accelerator pump, and that boot seals that off. Okay, folks, here's the carb, and let's take a better look at what I was talking about just now in regards to the accelerator pump. So this is completely enclosed. On the non-MX, there's a plastic cover instead of a metal cover, at least to my knowledge, because this is a CR flat. That one says just CR, it doesn't say flat on it, the one that I worked on for the DRZ 400E, but that just might be a marking difference, vive la difference between generations of these carbs, I don't know, but anyway, this is all enclosed, metal cover. The plastic one goes down to about here, and again you can see that push rod shaft for the accelerator pump in that version. It's got a little rubber boot on it that comes in the kit from JD Jetting, for example, and then you put that new boot on which seals it off down into there, but this thing is completely sealed, which is kind of nice. There are two holes or two areas off of the float bowl gasket. One is for that, and the other one is for another part in here. You'll notice, and that's to accommodate those two features. Whatever the other one is, I'm not 100% sure yet. But anyway, so you got to make sure you get the right kit for it. So you can see there is no, this cover is not, above the surface at all. It's pretty much at the surface because there's an O-ring gasket in here, and not that composite thicker one. It's another kind of giveaway on that, as far as I understand. So yeah, this is what we got. You also have on this one the fuel inlet swivels. There's got to be an O-ring seal in there, and I've dealt with these before. These can be a real bitch to change out, and I don't remember if it was this one or another one where I couldn't even change it out. But see, there's a screw right there. Whoops, I'm leaking gas. And you take that screw out, and apparently there's a feature on this that locks that in, and you can take it out and put that O-ring in. But sometimes they're real froze up. I'm hoping the kit comes with one. We'll go ahead and pull that screw out, take this inlet out, and then put a new O-ring on that. Because I imagine this thing would be notorious to leak, especially with ethanol fuel, which this most certainly does have, based upon my conversation with Ramon. You gotta watch out for Ramon, guys. Mechanics have no wrath than that of Ramon. I'm kidding. He's not. He's a nice guy. So, yeah. Just a joke. You don't have to take everything I say seriously, okay? The only other thing about these flat slides I don't really like is they don't have a drain screw. To drain the carbs, you got to take this out, and all of it comes out. So, but the nice thing about it is the main jet is right up inside this thing. So if you wanted to rejet the mains on these flat slides while they're on the bike, if you have enough room, you can just undo that, reach up, take the main out, put another one in, put that cap in, and you're done. We're ready to take her apart. So let me go make a clear spot in the mess over on the destruction bench, and we'll see what we can destruct here, okay? Okie doke, folks. Here we are on the destruction bench. AVE calls his the healing bench, so I can't use that one, right? So this is the destructo bench. This is where we destroy things. Not really, but anyway, here's what we got. Now take a look inside there. This is the drain plug, or the drain bottom. You can see that's pretty nasty. So that gives you a good idea what's going on inside this carb. It's just been sitting too long with gas in it that went bad. The gas has kind of a greenish blue tinge to it, so that's because it's got some sort of a fuel stabilizer, which are marginal over a period of time. So yeah, that's what you get. So I'm pretty sure when this comes out, this just pushes down on that shaft as opposed to some of them that actually hook in, I'm pretty sure. So when we take the float bowl off, this should come straight down. Some float bowls, like on the DRZ 400E has one that comes up and goes out into this. I'm not sure if this one does, though. It doesn't look like it does. I can't remember. Hell, folks, this is 5 years ago. I can't remember 5 minutes ago, for crying out loud. So, yeah, but we'll take her apart here. Ugh, my God. Was I a stud or what back then? Holy cow. I could have been a Chippendale then. In fact, I think I was. Ugh. I do like the fact that these carbs have the Allen, or the cap screws, instead of the, I don't want to call them Allen, they're really just hex cap screws, instead of the JIS screws. These are kind of nice. You can get, you can get these and replace them on any of the carbs that you have with JIS screws. It's not like illegal or anything. You can get these. This would be an M4, I'm sorry, an M5.08 thread pitch. So if you wanted to find something like that, you just get the proper length ones. You focus, and then you're good. Generally speaking, these are going to be M5s on these. I'm pretty sure all of these carbs of this size, some of them are I don't think they're M4s, but some may be. Yeah, so that's an M5. Let's go ahead and get the floatable off. Let's see if that comes out with it. I'm pretty sure it does. Oh, okay, it does the other way. All right, it pokes down into it. I wasn't sure. So it's restrained up in here, comes down and just goes into that. Like I said, the one on the DRZ 400E goes up on the outside against exposed, and there's a push rod that comes down through the actual housing that goes into where the accelerator pump is, like on this one. And then it hooks up into it's like a little 90 degree. It hooks up into the plastic, so that's what restrains it or registers it up there. This one is apparently clipped in, but we're not going to worry about that right now. It'll probably just pop out, but who cares at this point? We may not even have to take it out. Let's take a look at the guts. Let me get you a light so you can see. Yeah, she's a little crusty. Most likely it's a slow jet. So let's go over the jetting on this real quick. I think we can just pop this out if I'm not mistaken. Okay, I am mistaken. We got to take the main jet out. So this guy that's most proud of the bottom of the carb is your main jet. That's a classic Keihin flat slide CR main jet. I just replaced it on the DRZ 400E, in fact, just put new ones in. So we got to take that, and I think the emulsion tube out. We can get this plastic piece out. And I've gone over this before. This plastic piece is essentially a baffle. It's like a fuel restraint baffle that articulates with a spot on the bottom of the float bowl. And you can see what it does is it keeps the fuel around the jets as much as possible. So the fuel will populate through the appropriate, it's not like a seal or anything, it'll populate around that. And when the fuel level comes up, this is like a sub-chamber. And this sub-chamber helps to keep the fuel in when you're bouncing around because it is an ATV. That way you don't get a fuel starvation issue. It's kind of like akin to the old carburetors on cars years ago that had individual articulating floats. So you had two floats basically on those, and they would go up and down individually like this on those old 4-barrels and things like that. So when the car went around a curve, it wouldn't close up the float by pushing that fuel pressure upwards and close off the float valve and give you a lean run until it settles back in. In this case, it's just articulated properly. So if one was down, at least you'd be getting some fuel into the carb. And this is similar but different, where it just restrains the fuel into this particular pocket and helps, again, to populate the fuel around those jets where it needs to stay. So, yeah, I'd like to get that. I have to get it out of the way. So I guess the main and the what do you call it? The emulsion's got to come out to do that. So let's take that out. That's going to be a 7. Oh, I'm wrong. It's not a 7, it's a 6. Dummy. I just did one. You'd think I would know that. We'll take a look at the jets later. I'm not really worried about them now. That's going to be an 8. We'll get an 8 socket in there and get that out so we can get this out of the way. Yeah. Alright, that wasn't too tight. Just about where it was supposed to be. I guess I didn't apply my He-Man strength to it the last time I worked on it. At least this part, which is good. You don't need to over-tighten jets. Trust me on this, folks. So here's the emulsion. We just took it out. Now there's a couple of different setups on these carbs. This tip here is really the needle jet, and this smaller radius is what essentially usually penetrates down inside the carb body, or the carb throat. This one goes about flush in there, but when you're taking these things out on carbs, many carbs will just have this separate, and it pushes up against that. I don't think there's one up in there. to take out again? I don't believe so, because this looks like it is the bona fide item. I'm only mentioning this because when you take this out and it's a regular emulsion tube, and this little tip part would be somewhat either pressed in or kind of friction held by an interference fit inside there. It's really easy to lose that, so don't lose that. Unless it comes out altogether, then you don't have to worry about it like this one does. And we'll take that and we'll put that away as well. Let's take a look at the bottom again with the jets. Now the center part obviously is the main. You have, I believe, yeah, this guy up here is going to be your slow jet. It's also over by the slow screw. And this guy next to it over there is going to be the enricher jet. You can kind of tell that because it's bigger than what that slow jet's going to be. And I've gone over this before with other Suzuki Makini carbs, that you can screw up the orientation of the main jet and the enricher jet because they're exactly the same. You can't do it on these. There's no physical way to do it. But just keep the jets in order. That way you know which one goes where. That's the only reason why I'm bringing it up. So we'll go ahead and get those out, and then we'll take it from there and see what the rest of it looks like. I think this is what I was talking about before with the float level. I got to look it up again, but I'm pretty sure what it said was you adjust the float level to where this is parallel with the carb body surface where the float bowl meets up. You see what I mean by that? Now I'll verify that, but I'm almost positive that was the case. I don't remember where it was, but it was way off on the last time. So it was, I think it was like way down this way. So in other words, it was closing the flow valve here, and it wasn't allowing enough fuel to get into the carburetor, and that's why it was running so crappy. That's one of the reasons why. So I'm pretty sure that's properly set, but when we put a new one in, we'll make sure that we get that right again. But anyway, let me get the jets out, and we'll take a look at those and the rest of the carb. Alright, so this indeed is the enricher jet. It's probably like a 65 or something like that. I'd have to look it up. It looks like it's open, of course, because it's a fairly large orifice, so that's definitely the enricher jet. The main item of concern here, rather, is your slow jet. This is a bleed type because it has little holes in it, which appear to be open, but it is pretty crusty down inside there, that it is pretty mostly clogged. So you can just tell by looking at it, it's pretty crusty. And this is your main problem when you're dealing with these things that sit for so long. There's 3 areas on these carbs you have to be concerned with when it comes to the jetting. All right, is the jet itself, the jet circuit inside the carb, in other words, where that jet leads up to where it discharges fuel and air mixture into the car, a fuel mixture that is, and then the air jet side. On the back side inlet, you have air jets. Now, sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's only 1. In this case, you have 1 air jet, and I'm not exactly sure which one it goes to. I think that's a slow, yeah. And the reason why I can see that is, what you do is, there's your air jet for your slow side. Apparently it does not need a main air jet, or this could be the opening for it, the one to the left of it. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I guess it is, so it doesn't need to be jetted as far as restricted. Want to know where this goes? Pretty easy to do that. What you do here is, take the jet, you locate it, and then follow the path. You'll see a pathway. In this case, it's right there. Now you see, if you follow that pathway in right there, it goes up, and that pathway goes over and goes right to there. So that's your slow, with a slow jet screwed in. So you know that that's your slow air jet. You don't normally have to take these out. You just have to make sure they're clean. So the 3 areas, again, the jet itself, the internal circuit in which the jet provides fuel, and the air circuit for that particular jet, whether it's the main or the slow jet, okay? You got to make sure all those are good. There may be some jets like in a float bowl as well. This one has one right there. You see that? This is apparently a pickup where the fuel goes in. Okay, that's not a jet. That's actually a plug. I thought it was a jet and it's not. See, it's blocked off completely. So here's the deal with that. That's on the same circuit as this little ball check valve. That's the inlet. If you look around right there where the fuel comes in to the accelerator pump, goes through the little cap, the cover, okay? So it goes through the cover, which is going to be right there. comes back out, you know, after it goes in to the pump, comes back out, goes up through there, and will go out to that hole right there. Now that hole right there is straight through to where I just took that out of, but you can see right there, there's the path for it that goes up and into the carb to squirt out. So it must be some sort of a machining issue or machining, you know, feature that is in there for, and they just put a jet that's actually a plug in there, so otherwise it would just squirt right back up in the carb and it wouldn't do anything. So yeah, that's a little ball check valve on the suction side, if you will, of that pump. So it lets the fuel into the pump, then it pumps out the way I described, but this needs to be plugged, so we'll just put it right back in. This will go into the ultrasonic once we take the accelerator pump out. I'm certainly hoping that this diaphragm is not crap. Let's take a look at that real quick, because here's the one that came out, the DRZ 400E. You can see that it's delaminated. I mean, that's in bad shape. But that wasn't, you know, that wasn't too expensive. But I've been looking at these KTM parts. I don't know why they do it, but just because it's a Keihin carburetor on a KTM engine, the price is like 400% higher on parts. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm sure we can find an alternative to it. But let's go ahead and take out the accelerator pump. There's going to be a spring in here, so don't let that thing boing out. And remember where this is just a restraint for the vent hose, the vents on the carburetor and other hoses. Yeah, so you definitely want to make sure you don't let this go. It's not a very strong spring. It's just kind of a little spring that helps this thing return to sender. And remember, I said before that this was in backwards when I saw it before. And it's really kind of hard to do that because it's got a lip on it that goes into a groove that's machined or cast into the float bowl here. So you got an O-ring there and an O-ring there. It's like a thicker, taller O-ring. Those come in the kit, and we'll replace those. So it's pretty standard setup like on just about any Keihin or even Makinis as far as the accelerator pump goes. So I'm going to go ahead and take some more stuff off the carb, and once we get to that point, we'll come back and do an evaluation before I figure out how I'm going to clean it. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this. This is good. Alright, so we got the slow screw out. Will you get out of the way? Jeez. And so I want to show you how I dig these parts out inside here. There's going to be a spring. There's going to be a washer, flat washer, and a rubber O-ring. Got to get those out. You definitely don't want to miss one and try to put the new ones in. So all I do is I take a piece of wire like this that's bent up, reach in and grab the spring. Whoops. There's your spring. Way down inside there is the rest of it, if they're even there. I'm assuming they are. Yeah, I see them, but I got to modify my tool a little bit. I hate it when I got to modify my tool. I see the dang thing, it's just stuck in there. Sometimes they are very stuck. So what we'll do is we'll get some blaster. Sometimes that helps a lot. We'll dribble a little blaster down in there and then take it out. It should come out then. You can identify it because it's a little shinier than the aluminum around it. So that's sometimes a way to do it. There it is. It's hard. I can't really show you on camera. It's just really hard to see, but should be able to get it out. God dang, that is tight. Alright, let me play with this a little bit more and then we'll come back. Alright folks, that will not come out. But it will eventually. You can see a little shiny spot down. That's where it is. I can't get it stuck in there. So what we're going to do is, normally when I have these flat slides like this, these nice tall carburetors with the throttle, which is way up here instead of down here at with a butterfly, I can just drop these into the ultrasonic to about that high. I wasn't going to take this out, but I'm not going to do it now because apparently this is part of the actual carb body, because there's no breakout for this on the parts fish at all. So we're not going to mess with this. Plus there's some different type of screws that are probably Loctited in, so we're not going to mess with that. So we'll go up to about here and let it sit in there and turn the ultrasonic on. So essentially it's going to clean the main bottom of the carb. Normally what I do in that to protect the needle is I'll just rotate the throttle backwards and put like a plastic wedge or something or a piece of dowel in there to keep this up in the air a little bit, and then we'll clean up the whole bottom. Hopefully a little bit of ultrasonic and some heat from the ultrasonic fluid will break that loose. I'll get it out eventually, just sometimes it just takes a little bit of work on it. Alright, so I'm going to go verify on the kit that this comes with it. We may take this out right now too, because It's going to need to be replaced anyway. So hang on, let's take a look at that, and then we'll get in the ultrasonic. Here's the original parts fiche for it. You see that number 33 is 3 O-rings that are in line for that fuel inlet tap. They're also unavailable OEM, but I looked on the JD jetting kit. It's a JD something. I don't know. I can't remember the number now, but I looked it up. I'll put it in the description if I can remember. So it comes with the 3 O-rings that are exact same size for this. So let's go ahead and get that out so we can soak this thing and clean it properly. Remember, there's a screw right here, which I guess there's a feature in this piece that's turned down narrow, so it's kind of a locking mechanism for it. You can kind of visualize that, but hopefully we'll be able to see that shortly if this isn't like frozen here beyond all recognition. I'm not surprised if it was a special screw too. It's Loctited, so that makes sense. Blue Loctite on it. Like I said, these are sometimes extremely tight, but the kit comes with them. We got to get it out. So let's put some silicone on it. It's one of these things that, you know, if I could leave it, I would, but I just don't see it being plausible to do that because I don't want this thing to leak, and it comes with the O-rings. So there it goes. As long as you take that screw out, a little lube. There's one. There it goes. Yeah, so you got 1 there and 2 there. According to the parts fiche, they are the same O-rings, so there just happen to be 3 and spread out like this. And there's that area that screw goes to keep them from coming out on its own. So I'm glad we got that out. We'll take the O-rings off later. Don't dig these out with metal if you can all help it. Dig it out with something that won't damage this. This is going to be brass, you know, so it's like brassy ass. Sometimes I just take a coffee stirrer like this, and you see you can push on it with a coffee stirrer, and it brings up that O-ring, probably breaks it. That's even better. And it snaps it off, and then you don't do any damage to it. That's the way to take these off. You want to use something that's not metal. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'll get them off later. You don't need to see that now. Okay, so we're good. I'm going to put in the ultrasonic for a while, paying attention to not going above this level. We'll get the whole bottom of it cleaned out. We'll get the, you know, what are we going to do? We're going to get the jets blown out and things like that. Then what we'll do is we'll come back, and I'm not going to do it now. We'll do it later on in the video. Just before we rebuild it, we'll pop this off because we got to replace this O-ring anyway. I mean, I'll take a quick look at it, but it's nothing really to see in there to make sure there's nothing like jammed up or any dirt or anything in there. But it's just the opening to the slide. You'll see it later when we replace that O-ring. And then we'll just pick up the video at that point once it's clean and we're ready to rebuild it. Because I got to wait some time for the kit to come in. And we're certainly not going to make you wait all that long. Oh, by the way, I will do one thing here to tell you about. You definitely want to take these enrichers out before you blow it out if you can. Because there's a plunger in there, and usually what happens is there's going to be a spot that comes down into the main bore on the intake side, and that's what you have here. So when that plunger opens up, it opens essentially a circuit up which comes up in relationship to the enricher jet right there, and that air coming through acts as a venturi right there and allows that richer mixture to come up and actually come through there. So if you have it like this and you go to blow that out, it's not going to clean it. The best thing to do is just take it out completely. If you can't, just open it up and then blow it out gently. Don't put like 300 psi on it, and then do it that way. This is going to be a 14 mil. Usually they are, and then you just take them right out and get them out of the way and inspect them. And I usually put a little drop of oil on the shaft. I like oil in my shaft. And that way it goes in and out nicely. You know, there's got to be a joke there somewhere. So there's your plunger. There's going to be nothing else in there. This is the whole deal right here, okay? So it's a good idea to do that before you clean it. So like I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get ready to clean. We'll come back when I got the kit. When I've got this thing getting ready to be rebuilt, we'll put it back together and then move on to getting it put back in once we do some testing on it. There we are, folks. A little bit of time in the ultrasonic and they come right out. So that's what you're looking to get out of there, that washer, the flat washer, and that O-ring. You got to get them out. It'll screw you up when you put the new ones in if you don't. You reuse the washer usually, but not the O-ring. Focus!